give Ms. Lester a hand.
BC, nearly 14,000 years ago, many scientists believed some of the earliest people began to cross a land bridge connecting what is now Alaska and Russia. These Paleo-Indians descended into North America following game like mastodon and mammoth, and eventually became the first settlers of Florida.
The Appalachian.
Settled villages in northwest Florida. They farmed the fertile land, growing corn, beans, and squash. Men smoked tobacco, wore deerskin loincloths, painted their bodies with red ochre, and adorned themselves with feathers. Women wore skirts woven from Spanish moss and other plant fibers. A favorite game of the Appalachian was played by trying to kick a small, hard ball into a goal.
The Timucua
Were the largest indigenous group of Florida. The Timucua consisted of several chiefdoms bound by a common language. They were farmers, but also hunted deer, bear, alligators, and fished with hooks and traps. Men were known for their tattooed bodies and for being fierce warriors. Women, children, and elders farmed or gathered food.
The Tocobega. We lived in small villages on the western coast of present-day Tampa Bay.
Mounds built by the Tocobega can still be found here today. They used an atlatl to hunt, but also ate shellfish and even manatee. According to archaeologists, the Tocobega did very little farming and instead traded with northern groups for corn and other crops.
The Tequesta.
Settled along the southeastern coast of Florida. Although small in number, they had many villages near the mouth of the Miami River and on the coastal islands near Biscayne Bay. The Tequesta did not practice any form of agriculture. Men fished for shark and porpoise, while women collected clams and oysters.
The Calusa.
Were sometimes known as the Shell People because of their amazing use of shells. This group of natives used shells to make jewelry, weapons, and tools. They lived along southwestern Florida and traveled in dugout canoes made from hollowed-out cypress trees. The Calusa never spent much time hunting or farming, but instead raided other tribes. More often than not, it was the outnumbered Tequesta. In 1492,
Christopher Columbus
set sail in search of a new route to Asia. On October 12th, his ships made land. Thinking he reached the Indies near the coast of Asia, Columbus actually landed in the Bahamas.
I shall call these people Indians.
Columbus completed 4 round trips between Spain and the Americas. These voyages marked the beginning of the European exploration and colonization of the American continents.
On Columbus's second sailing trip, I, explorer and conquistador, joined Columbus and I and Juan Ponce de Leon.
In 1513, Ponce de Leon set sail in search of new lands to claim for the Spanish Empire and searched for the island of Bimini. On April 2nd, these 3 ships made land near present-day Melbourne Beach. Ponce, overwhelmed by its beauty, named the land
La Florida.
After all, it was the season of Spain's Easter of flowers. In 1521, he returned to Florida to start a colony in the native village of Tampa, at the mouth of present-day Charlotte Harbor. The Calusa, however, did not welcome him, and a battle quickly ensued. Ponce de Leon was badly injured by an arrow. His ships quickly sailed back to Cuba, where where Ponce died of his wounds. Stories of Ponce de Leon's adventures lured other Spanish explorers to come to Florida. In 1527,
Pedro de Narvaez
sailed from Spain to start a colony. Narvaez landed in our own backyard at what is currently known as the Jungle Prada site in St. Petersburg. Upon meeting the natives, he demanded to know,
Where's the gold?
the Indians, wanting him to leave, decided to trick him. Wandering for months and suffering from starvation, desertion, and Indian attacks, Narvaez and his remaining crew built makeshift rafts hoping to set sail to a Spanish colony in Mexico. Narvaez was never seen again.
I should write about this.
One lucky survivor of the failed Narvaez expedition,
Oliver Nunez Cabeza de Vaca.
wrote an account of his experiences and kept detailed notes of the many American Indian tribes he encountered. Upon his return to Spain, de Vaca published La Relación, the narratives of his expedition. Another explorer that was influenced by the achievements of the Spanish before him,
Hernando de Soto.
set sail for Florida in 1539.
I brought with me men, horses, pigs, and supplies, but also infectious diseases such as smallpox and measles.
On his march north in search of gold and riches, De Soto was instrumental in contributing to the development of hostile relationships between many Native American tribes and Europeans. Although he never found the riches in Florida he had found in South America, De Soto was the first European to discover
The Mississippi River.
By 1561, the Spanish had not found the riches they sought in Florida and had failed to build a single colony. That year, the King of Spain declared,
Spain is no longer interested in Florida.
Spain was not the only country interested in exploring North America. In 1562, a Frenchman by the name of
Roll.
landed on a small island on the St. Johns River, erected a marker with a bronze shield, and claimed Florida. The French group received a friendly welcome from the Timucua, with whom they traded. Ribault turned his fleet north and sailed up the coast to South Carolina, where he founded. Ribault, however, soon set sail for France to secure supplies for the small settlement.
René Laudonnière. In 1564, René Laudonnière, who sailed to Florida with Ribault 2 years earlier and colonized to present-day Jacksonville to build Fort Caroline.
The artist
John Lemoyne.
was one of the settlers of Fort Caroline. Lemoyne traveled through North Florida, charting the coastline and the lives of the Timucua Indians. His engravings gave a detailed account of the early Native American way of life. While the life at Fort Caroline flourished at first, problems soon arose. The Timucua became tired of supplying the colonists with food. Many colonists were more interested in seeking gold and silver than farming, and the colony soon attracted the attention of the Spanish. The Spanish decided this French fort was much too close to their treasure route, and a stage was set for battle. Ribault, who had been spending some time as a prisoner in the Tower of London, was quickly bonded and sent to Florida to protect Fort Caroline and relieve Laudonnière of his governorship. The Spanish, not to be outdone, sent their own ex-con,
Pedro Menendez de Aviles.
to attack Fort Caroline and drive out the French. Upon arrival, however, Menendez found the mouth of the St. Johns River blockaded by Ribault's ships. Menendez turned his fleet south and sailed into a protected harbor. Ribault decided to give chase, but many of his ships were destroyed by a massive storm. Menendez marched his troops north and led a surprise attack on Fort Caroline. Laudonnière and Lemoyne escaped. Ribault, however, was sentenced Menendez's St. Augustine became the first permanent European settlement in North America. Despite Menendez's efforts, St. Augustine struggled. The settlement suffered from disease, desertion, Indian attacks, and threats from other nations. A British explorer and privateer,
Sir Francis Drake,
or as some would call him, a pirate, began attacking the treasure fleet and coastal settlements of Spain. In 1586, he raided St. Augustine and issued the dreadful orders. Over the next 80 years, the Spanish settlement suffered pirate attacks, hurricanes, floods, and another fire. But each time the settlers rebuilt their homes and wooden fort. In 1672, the Spanish decided to build a sturdier fort. The Castillo de San Marcos took 20 years to build. Built out of coquina stone, the fort withstood 2 more British attacks. Due to the success of Spanish colonialism in Florida, Spain sent missionaries to convert what they thought were the native savages. During this time, some Native Americans adopted the European way of life. However, many were forced to accept it. Many of the workers who helped build the Castillo de San Marcos were escaped slaves from the northern British colonies that had agreed to accept the Roman Catholic religion in return for protection and freedom. The Black Militia, under the leadership of
Francisco Menendez,
helped defend the fort against British attacks and won the respect of the Spanish. In 1738, the Spanish governor granted the Africans their own land.
Fort Rosette,
Lies 2 miles north of St. Augustine and was the first free African settlement in what is now the United States. In 1741, the British captured Menendez and resold him into slavery. But
in 1752, I was able to come back to Fort Rosette as a free man.
the love of freedom was shared by another group.
The Seminole Indian.
As a result of the northern British settlements, many Native American groups migrated to Florida. The Spanish had brought disease and war to the Native Americans of Florida. Almost all of the original cultures of Florida had disappeared. The very few that remained joined those that migrated from the north. Some of them had left Spanish missions rather than give up their own beliefs. The First Seminole War began in 1818. Then came the second in 1835. With each war, the Seminole population and land shrank. Many were forced to leave Florida and were displaced to reservations. By the end of the Third Seminole War in 1858, less than 200 Florida Seminoles remained. Those remaining few are the only tribe to carry on their culture and remain unconquered. Some say their name comes from the Spanish word cimarrones, which means runaways. Many Native Americans, however, believe the name means free people. And so concludes Florida's early history.